Okay, the Zoom is live.
Great. Reconvening to open session. This meeting is called to order at 5:09 p.m. Little gavel. Is there anything to report from closed session? Let's hear.
There is nothing to report from closed session.
Okay, can everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A first from Trustee Joseph and a second from Trustee Amanzadeh. Any comments or changes on the agenda?
Yes, I'd like to move item I-1B, which is the report from Godby Research, the polling results, and I'd like to move that before the community reports. So we have it at the very start. Brian Godby, who's presenting virtually, has another meeting to be at, so I just want to give him appropriate time.
Great. We need a vote to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And David raised his hand. And we, just to note, we do have a board member as a panelist on the Zoom today.
The agenda is approved as amended. Okay, we are open now for public comment. Anybody who would like to speak tonight?
This is
Yeah.
members of the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
So we have some members from our Equity and Inclusion Committee, committee and our subcommittee that will be speaking tonight on an item that we have later on in the agenda, a portion of that. So
Great.
Wendy, take it away.
Thank you, Wendy.
Good evening. Thank you
Wendy.
so much.
Will you use the microphone? Sorry, it's for all the people on the Zoom. We can hear you just fine, but
Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening. It's really great to be here with you this evening. We have members of our Kent Equity and Inclusion Committee, as well as our Land Acknowledgement Subcommittee, who are going to be offering a presentation to you tonight. It's really timely that we're presenting this evening right on the heels of Indigenous Peoples Day, which we were able to honor yesterday. And we'd like to share about something that our subcommittee has been working on that honors the Indigenous people who were the first inhabitants of Marin. And that is sharing the land acknowledgement that we've been developing, and offer some information about land acknowledgements, hear from members of the subcommittee, hear from speakers, student speakers, parent speakers, staff speakers, and what this means for our school community. And this land acknowledgement really builds on the actions that our district has been taking to honor Indigenous people, with the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day that, just was started with encouragement from our very own students. So we're delighted again to be able to present to you this evening. And I would like to first have Sarah Amanzadeh come up and just help explain what a land acknowledgement is and the purpose it serves.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, fellow board
On the
members.
other side of the dais.
Happy to address you today. I've been honored to work with our DI subcommittee and really grateful to our students for leading this effort. We are following your lead, so thank you. I'm just going to briefly discuss what a land acknowledgement is, which is different than a proclamation, which Governor Newsom issued yesterday, recognizing October 13th as Indigenous Peoples Day, and which President Biden also did in 2021. So a land acknowledgement is different than a proclamation or an apology. A land acknowledgement in California is a formal statement that recognizes and respects the Indigenous peoples who are the traditional stewards of the land. It's a way for a government body to acknowledge the history of dispossession, violence, and the ongoing presence and relationship of Native people to their ancestral territories. These acknowledgements are used to promote reconciliation and a more just relationship with Indigenous communities. And they often have several key components. They include an acknowledgement of specific tribes, recognizing their ancestral lands, a recognition of the history and in particular, the ongoing impacts of settler colonialism, land seizure and displacement. And we honor the present as well. We want to explicitly state that Indigenous peoples are still present and connected to their lands, moving beyond past tense language. And finally, it's a call to action. And I know that's true for KSD in particular. We want to foster empathy, understanding, and action from our broader community toward reconciliation, and also to build meaningful partnerships with Native communities. And we started that effort this summer by starting the Tribal Consultation Project with this land acknowledgement. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to our student leaders.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So now we would like to hear from members of our student speakers who are going to be sharing about what the land acknowledgement means to them and other reflections that they may have. So we'll start with our first student speaker, Christian Frankus.
I'm Christian Frankus. I'm in 8th grade. We've all heard the phrase, history is written by the victors. This is not by accident. Often the victors are the only ones left to tell the story of what happened. In the case of Christopher Columbus, his arrival on the island of Hispaniola resulted in the extinction of 94% of its population. Since 1971, we have celebrated on the second Monday of October someone who discovered the New World, and for most of us here, resulted in better lives, liberty, and freedom. While the U.S. was founded on these principles, the genocide of its indigenous population at the hands of people who followed in Columbus's footsteps should be recognized, and the record should be clarified and corrected. A statement of land acknowledgement is only a first step in setting the record straight and recognizing the fact that we are not the first inhabitants of this land, but the bounty and beauty that we benefit from was cared for by the Coast Miwok since time immemorial. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
All right, now our second speaker, Blake Snyder, come on up. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Blake Snyder. I'm also in 8th grade, and I've been a member of SLAM for all 4 years I've been at Kent. And this year I got to take a look at the presentation that we were making for the land acknowledgement before we presented the presentation to the whole student body. And I have to say, I think it's really good what we've done with the land acknowledgement. And I mean, we all know what happened when Christopher Columbus came here. As Christian said, upwards of 90% of the indigenous population here was wiped out, but they've still thrived throughout all those hard times, and are still here today. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that they were here before us, or they were here before the colonists, and that this land, this land belonged to them, and that it would not be just or right to not acknowledge that, because sorry, I didn't have something prepared for this, but anyway, yeah.
You're
Anyway.
good. You're good. Yeah.
Yes, so I think it's very good what we've done with the land acknowledgement. I think that it acknowledges and as Christian said, sets the record straight. Lets the community know that we are acknowledging and know the land that we are on, and do not stand for what happened in the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Sammy Marte. Come on up, Sammy.
Hi, I'm Sammy Morte, and I think it's really, I'm in 6th grade, sorry. I think it's really important that we celebrate the indigenous people who lived in Marin County thousands of years ago. The Coast Miwoks were the first people in this area, and they cared for the land, showing great respect for nature and never wasting anything. When we celebrate indigenous people, we get to learn about their amazing culture, history, art, and traditions. It also reminds us to take care of the earth the way they did. Sometimes people forget who lived here first, so celebrating them is important, and giving them credit is the least we can do. Celebrating indigenous people brings our community closer together. It reminds us to respect everyone's heritage. It's also a way to show gratitude for the land we live on today.
Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you so much. Our next two speakers are Jolene Pesserin and Sadiah Jackson. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Sadiah. I'm in sixth grade. I'm Miwok, Tiwok, and Hopi.
Hi, I'm Jolene. I'm in sixth grade.
People think we are only violent, singing, and dancing cultures.
But they are wrong. They have more to it.
I feel hurt that they think that, when really we're just a big family.
Being Sadia's friend helps me understand her more, her culture more, and where she came from.
My culture involves family, jewelry, style, and love. If one tribe is under attack, we will fight like life depends on it. It also hurts when everyone says Christopher found the land in near death looking for supplies, when he was really searching for the land to steal supplies and people.
I hope that people end up realizing how important it is to recognize other tribes.
My hair has certain rules. Like one, I can never cut my hair unless the ends are dead. Or if my hair was healthy and young, I'm cutting souls and memories. And if I want my culture to be known, I have to have a high ponytail and a long braid or two braids in a ponytail.
I'm glad that there are some people who realize it's important to acknowledge Indigenous people and that the school realized it's important to take a day off for Indigenous peoples.
Our dances recognize all of the chiefs, people, and elders who were important, but they were murdered, so dances represent those people. And music also does too. Our jewelry is also known to what colors we represent. I have a necklace that has a good feather and my name carved in it, and that feather protects me and my family.
I feel like it's important to realize everyone's different cultures and where they come from. It's also important to realize that just because someone may look different doesn't mean they should be treated differently. They matter too.
And that is why we matter. We are not invisible. We need to be heard. We need our culture to rise in triumph and fury to protect our rightful land once and for all.
I'm so disappointed of how the Europeans acted. As a European, I wish that they had acted differently instead of stealing their land. It's the natives' land after all. This is not right.
This needs to change right now.
Thank you, Jolene, and thank you, Sadiah, for sharing with us.
All right, our next speaker is Jessica Jackson, Sadiah's mother.
Hello, board. You guys were amazing. First of all, I love all the history, all the knowledge, the facts, really warmed my heart and soul. And it's really important for me to be here and for Sadiah. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to do this. I told myself I wasn't going to cry, but it really means a lot to us as Indigenous members of both the Hopi, Miwok, and Tiwok communities, which is Arizona, Texas, and California. So we're connected to all three of those tribes. So it's an honor to be standing up here to represent so many people that don't have voices. And I want to thank the Kenfield School District for doing this because it means a lot. We were on sunrise ceremony yesterday in Alcatraz out there, 4 o'clock in the morning, dancing, singing, and praying for everybody for this land. And I'm having more joy here than I was on Alcatraz right now. Like my spirit has just been rejuvenated. And yes, thank you. Thank you for honoring my child and recognizing how diverse she is and how lucky you are to be part of all of these amazing cultures. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
I want to thank all of our student speakers for sharing from your heart. Jessica, for sharing your thoughts as well. It's just so meaningful to have you here this evening and to be part of this, and just appreciate. I can feel how much the appreciation you have for this land acknowledgement being established, and we're just so grateful that you and Sadaya are a part of our community, and our community is so much richer because of people like you. We'd like to, one of our Equity and Inclusion Committee members, Julie Kidd, wrote a piece that captures some of the historical periods in our state's history and the devastating impact that it has had on California's indigenous population. This really is a heartbreaking reality, and it's critical that this truth in our state's and our nation's history is shared with students as they explore their social studies and history curriculum. So several of us are going to be reading portions of this statement or this piece in her absence this evening. So come on up. California Indian history is a story of profound resilience in the face of two waves of colonialization that erased entire cultures. Before European contact, California was home to an estimated 300,000 to 350,000 Native people, one of the most densely populated and culturally diverse indigenous regions in North America.
The first wave of devastation came with Spanish colonization in 1769. Native Californians were taken from their villages, baptized without consent, and made to work in fields and workshops under military guard. Punishments for resistance included flogging, shackling, and solitary confinement. Disease spread rapidly in these overcrowded missions. Smallpox, measles, and syphilis decimated communities. By the time Mexico secularized the missions in the 1830s, tens of thousands of Native Californians had died.
The second wave came with the gold rush. In 1846, the native population had already dropped around 150,000. By 1870, it had collapsed to just 30,000. That's an 80% decrease in less than 30 years and is known as the California Genocide. California's government paid bounties for native scalps and heads. Militias raided villages, massacred families, and trafficked native children into forced labor. The 1850 Act for the Government and Protection of Indians legalized the kidnapping and indenture of native people, especially children. One estimate suggests that between 10,000 and 27,000 Native Californians were enslaved during this period.
Federal treaties negotiated with tribes were never ratified, leaving California Indians without land, rights, or recognition. The combined impact of disease, displacement, enslavement, and murder reduced California's native population by over 90% in less than a century. This part of California history does not get the attention it deserves. It isn't just tragic, it's foundational. California was built on the dispossession and destruction of indigenous peoples. Acknowledging these truths in the form of a land acknowledgement is essential and the least we can do as a community.
Thank you again. That was from Julie Kidd, who wrote that on our behalf. In recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day, we focused our advisory lesson last week at Kent on our forthcoming draft land acknowledgement. And we wanted to take this opportunity to share some of the students' responses with you. Grant, would you like to share some of your noticings about your interactions with students?
Yeah, and I will just say, you know, many of us were in this very room and over at the old district office when years of Kent Field School District students came through and actually advocated for honoring Indigenous Peoples Day. And ultimately, our school has acknowledged Indigenous Peoples Day for the past 2 years. And I do recall the Board of Education at that time implored us that we don't just acknowledge a day, we take action to leverage that day to further educate our children. So we've done so in a variety of means, and one of them being through our advisory program. So last week we did teach about the Coast Miwok and a lesson that was designed to educate our children about Indigenous people and the way in which they lived before colonization, as well as Coast Miwok who are still living in this community today. And I was really taken aback by how thorough the 8th graders in my advisory were able to just kind of hold these competing concepts, which is there is a life that we live in this community now that has all of the comforts of Western civilization and is a very, thriving, robust community, juxtaposed with this holding of pain and hurt for the tragedy that was committed to the people that were living here prior to colonization. And when we discussed things just about kind of what students can do now, some of the strongest voices were saying this is about education. It's about making sure that we speak with one voice about what happened in the past to ensure like things like that don't happen in the future. And also just a willingness to really hold space for the fact that what happened was an incredible tragedy, and eighth graders offered the word genocide into the room. I guess what I wanted to emphasize is that when we take the time to educate our children about the complicated, nuanced nature of history, they rise and they're able to advocate for what they would like to see and what they believe is a socially just path forward. So I want to appreciate our students here, as well as the hundreds of students that are not here that were able to engage in a discussion about some of the complications of history and how it has led to today and how we can do better to acknowledge it going forward. Thank you, Mindy.
And as our social justice chair and one of the author of our advisory lesson last week and one of our teachers, Heather, I invite you to come to the podium just to share some of your thoughts.
Hi, Heather Snyder. And yes, I'm serving as advisory chair this year at Kent. And I worked in collaboration with Wendy and Grant to create this lesson. We had an opportunity to preview it with our SLAM members, as Blake mentioned. That's when he was talking about, that's my son, by the way. He was saying that he got to see it first. And that was part of our SLAM lesson, which we do weekly. And then we were hoping they might be ambassadors in their advisory classrooms as the lesson unfolded that day. And the lesson started with just what does indigenous mean? What do we know about the indigenous who lived in Marin originally? And then we saw a video about their traditional way of life, as well as a video about an artist who is working in collaboration with the living great-great-granddaughter of the last Coast Miwok chief. And they've been working to create a sculpture made out of bronze that will be, I don't know the latest on that. Maybe you know, I'm not sure. Okay, so I don't have the most up to date of where the sculpture is now, but I know that it's in the works. And then we read, we broke apart the land acknowledgement that's been drafted by the Equity and Inclusion Committee, the subcommittee that's worked on that. And the students read really slowly and carefully through each paragraph and the teachers tried to encourage the students to put it into their own words and to say what it meant to them. And that's kind of the conversation that Grant was just referring to with his students. And then the students were tasked with writing their own like one sentence land acknowledgement, just saying something to the effect of, I acknowledge that the land I come to at Kent Middle School was first here inhabited by the indigenous Miwok Native Americans. We also talked about how we might honor the indigenous people on Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as in every day, how we can bring that to life. And I would say that my experience with my 8th grade advisory, as well as after some reflection with our SLAM group today, this work, it actually highlighted for me how important this work is, and that there are gaps of knowledge and understanding about why this is so important. And so we need to continue to work with our students, to educate our students, and those that are ready, our leaders, like our SLAM group, to help us bring this land acknowledgement to life once it's finally published. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
So I just wanted to share a couple of my noticings in my group, and Sammy is in my advisory, and so it was delightful to have her contributions in that there was this real strong interest in learning more about the Native Indigenous people, the Coast Miwok, the Federated Indians of Grattan Rancheria, just to learn more about their life in the past and what their cultures and traditions and lives look like in the present. And just really appreciated our district naming that the land where our schools are located was and is the original land of these Native peoples in Marin, and that it was taken from them, just naming that. So it was a really rich discussion, and so much more I could highlight, but Just wanted to thank Heather and our students for having that robust discussion last Wednesday during advisory. I would like to just share a little bit about the process that we've taken in terms of developing the land acknowledgement, where we're at in the steps of its development. So our subcommittee is comprised of parents, teachers, administration on the Equity and Inclusion Committee. And we began by doing research about land acknowledgements ourselves to solidify our own understanding about their purpose and why they are so important. We closely examined the land acknowledgements of neighboring school districts in Marin to identify the key elements to potentially include in ours. Looked really carefully at TAM Union High School District's statement, Miller Creek School District statement, and Ross Valley School District's statement and page about land acknowledgements. And TAM's land acknowledgement was of particular interest to us because knowing that our students feed into that district, we're recognizing the natural link between KSD and TAM. We also reviewed the land acknowledgements from other school districts and organizations across the Bay Area to look for common elements. And we identified a few that we wanted to make sure we included. Number one, naming the Indigenous people on whose land our schools sit, recognizing their relationship, past and present relationship to the land, including language about the land being forcibly taken from Indigenous people and the harm and negative impact that this has had on them. And finally, identifying actions to be taken and a commitment to be made to the Indigenous community. These are elements that were consistent across all the land acknowledgements that we reviewed. So we drafted one and took into careful consideration literally every word that was included. And it was also shared with some initial tribal leaders to gather their input, and more is forthcoming. Then we shared the statement with our Equity and Inclusion Committee, and they suggested adding a line about our students engaging in ongoing learning about Indigenous people of this land and their ways of the past, and along with cultural traditions in the present and who they are today. And in addition to creating this statement, our committee is creating a list of potential actions to complement this statement related to education, building awareness, shifting practices, and potentially shifting educational instruction to align with the intention around this statement. And so that's still in development. And as far as next steps, we'll continue to refine the land acknowledgement, further develop that list of actions to accompany the statement, and create a resource with helpful information for our community to better understand our land acknowledgement and learn more about the Indigenous people who are the first inhabitants of Marin. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sarah and/or Raquel to present the board resolution for your consideration this evening.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank
And as Wendy described, we did a fairly intensive process with our DEI subcommittee, but as we move forward in the hopes of adopting land acknowledgement today, we realized that we haven't yet done that work as a broader community. And we want to do the learning and unlearning together with KTA, PTA, KESPA, KIC, everybody in the audience and all the entities that you represent, more of our students. We want everyone to embrace and understand our shared history and what has happened here that led us to adopt a land acknowledgement. So rather than adopt one today, we want to think about this school year as earning the privilege to adopt a land acknowledgement in a way that is meaningful and action-oriented. So we are today going to consider a resolution to that effect, and I will read it now. Resolution number 5, a resolution to honor the Indigenous peoples of the land. Whereas Kentfield School District is located on the traditional and unceded ancestral land of the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria and Coast Miwok people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. Whereas colonialism has a profound and lasting impact on the tribes and Indigenous peoples of this area, and we acknowledge our responsibility to understand and take accountability for this history and work towards healing and reconciliation. Whereas Kentfield School District has a responsibility to foster greater awareness and respect for Indigenous cultures, histories, and present-day communities within our schools and communities. And whereas the commitment to a land acknowledgement should include ongoing actions to support and build respectful relationships with local Indigenous communities and tribes. Whereas Indigenous Peoples Day is the second Monday in October, which our students and teachers now observe as a school holiday, thanks to the initiative and leadership of Kentfield School District students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kentfield School District commits to undertake the learning, unlearning, and relationship building needed to earn the privilege of adopting a land acknowledgement during the 2025-2026 school year, as well as a plan to ensure ongoing actions and learning.
Thank you so much for that, Sarah. So I think it was very timely, again, to have the opportunity to hear from our students, to hear from our staff related to a land acknowledgement, what that means for our community, and then to have our board consider this resolution that Sarah just read. And so during the action agenda later on in the meeting, the board will take action related to the resolution because we didn't adjust that. And right now we're still in public comment. But it's good that the community that's all here present got to hear specifically what that resolution is stating and the commitments that this board and this community wants to move forward.
Just wanted to say thank you to everybody here, all the kids for coming in and your passion on this, and to our staff for really fulfilling that commitment to make sure this wasn't just another vacation day and truly making sure that real education is happening on this. So, and also to the Equity and Inclusion Committee for all your work putting this in place. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see.
So we made that adjustment to the agenda to move to the Godby research presentation.
Okay, so next we will have a report from Godby Research on the polling results relating to the Kentfield School District parcel tax. As this is a report to the Board of Trustees, only board members may ask questions during and following the report. But if anybody else has questions following the report, please contact Superintendent Rose following the meeting.
And we have Brian Godby and Trustee Riedel on Zoom. You can see them there. Charles Heath is here, our consultant from Team Civex, that will be sharing some information as well as Brian. And for members of our public that are here, there are copies of the presentation at the corner of the table there if you want to grab. There's about 20 copies there for folks to be able to look through as we go through the presentation. So with that said, Charles, thank you so much for being here. Brian, thank you for being here. I'll hand it over to you guys.
Not a problem. Thanks for having us. I'll start with a brief introduction and then I'll hand it over to Brian to walk through the results of the recently conducted community survey. As Superintendent Rose mentioned, we're here to talk today about the district's parcel tax. For those that aren't aware, parcel taxes are an incredibly important source of funding for local school districts. Virtually all districts in Marin County have one. About 9% of the districts statewide have a voter-approved parcel tax. And the benefit of parcel taxes is, in addition to money that you might receive through normal property tax collections or state funding, this is an opportunity for districts to generate supplemental funding by seeking approval from 2/3 of local voters for a tax that's applied to properties within the district. Kentfield School District has benefited from parcel tax funding since 1987. The first parcel tax was passed here. It was a little $97 per parcel tax that about 80% of voters approved back in 1987. That measure has since been renewed 5 times, and over time it's grown to become a pretty significant portion of the district's budget. This year, the parcel tax will provide about $5.3 million, which is about 25% of the school district's operating budget. So the existing parcel tax measure that was adopted as Measure A back in March of 2018 is set to expire in 2028. Most school districts that have a significant portion of their operating budget reliant upon a voter-approved parcel tax, they don't wait until the 11th hour before their parcel tax expires to seek a renewal. And the reason for that being is that cutting 25% of your budget, over $5 million, would fundamentally reshape the school district. You would have to, if you were to wait, you would have to adopt a budget assuming no parcel tax revenue in your budget, issue the corresponding layoff notices, and create quite a bit of agitation within your school district. So Typically, what we recommend is approximately 2 years prior to the expiration of the tax that you start looking at a potential renewal. Because these measures require a 2/3 vote, oftentimes you want to give yourself an opportunity to present it to the community. And if you happen to come up short, leave yourself time to come back with a revised proposal before the funding actually expires and you have to make those cuts. So that's why we're here talking about this at the end of 2025, because there's 2 opportunities next year with statewide elections, in the June primary election and the November general election, when we could potentially put a parcel tax measure on the ballot. So the survey that Brian Godby recently conducted looks at the viability of a potential parcel tax measure in one of those 2 elections, and I'll let him comment on the support we found. The existing parcel tax funding can be utilized for specific purposes that were adopted as part of that Measure A back in 2018 when the measure was last renewed. Those include funding core academic programs throughout the district, attracting and retaining teachers and school staff, as well as preserving the smallest class sizes possible. Those are the uses that voters approved, and those are the only limitations on the use of funding. Importantly, there's also a restriction on the use of parcel tax funds that they cannot be used for administrator salaries or benefits. So that is a carve out within the measure so that the funding goes directly to the classroom and not to administration. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Brian? Oh, actually, one other thing. As we go through the survey results, you'll see that we are looking at a renewal of the existing parcel tax structure, meaning that it is a flat rate that's applied to all parcels of land within the district. There are some school districts that apply their parcel tax differently based on the square footage of properties within the district. There was actually a district here locally that attempted a square footage based parcel tax recently. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful. We've seen a general trend where if you have a district that's had a flat parcel tax in place for quite some time and then tries to change the methodology, it is challenging to pass because, again, this measure has been in place for over 40 years. Voters have used to it. It's proven. They've seen the results. Changing the methodology introduces a lot of questions. Also, in a district like yours that is predominantly single-family homes, you don't really see much benefit, much additional revenue from moving to a square footage based model because the band of property sizes is fairly narrow. Where we see square footage based parcel taxes really benefit school districts. Good examples are like West Contra Costa Unified in Richmond or Alameda Unified. They have significant non-residential parcels within their district, and they have hundreds of thousands of square feet. And so that can fundamentally reduce the cost to single-family homeowners because those other parcels are contributing so much. That's not the reality of the makeup of your school district, which is why we're focused here on a flat rate structure. So with that, Brian, do you want to walk us through the survey results?
Sure. Thank you, Charles. I think everybody can see the presentation now.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Members of the board, happy to present the data this evening. As Charles alluded to, we looked at a variety of different segments in the survey. We looked at the climate of the district. So that's what people think about the quality of education and your use of taxpayer funds and whether you need additional funding. We looked specifically at a parcel tax measure. And as Charles alluded to, we looked at both a November 26th election and a June election. We think actually, as you'll see in a moment, the June election is a better opportunity. We also looked at various things you might spend the money on to see what the voters' priorities were for those items. We tested informational statements on both sides of the equation. We looked at a different rate model, and there's, of course, a wealth of demographic and behavioral characteristics behind all of this that we use to make sure that the sample is representative of the district and the elections that we're interested in. Oops. Let's go the right way. In terms of the methodology, a little more detail, we did an online and phone survey. Online meaning a text invitation to an online survey and an email invitation to an online survey, and then phone meaning landline. Yes, there are still a few people that take survey that way. And cell phone, you can see that the majority come from the cell phone. The second is the text invitation to the online survey. But again, we still do get some people who take the survey on a landline phone. And we want to make sure everybody has an equal chance of participating regardless of what their technology preferences are. Again, we looked at likely November and June universe. We're going to focus mostly on June, but I'll make some references to November. We were in the field in mid through the end of September. The survey was about 25 minutes long on the phone. We don't know how long it takes people to do it online because you can start and stop and come back hours later, etc. The overall margin of error for the June universe is 6.87. It's just a little bit lower, 6.07 for November, but not a significant difference. In terms of the key findings, that first section, the climate section, this is the rating of the job the district is doing to provide a quality education. If you add the very and somewhats together, the favorable is 88.4. Comparing that to a slightly different universe in the 2004 survey before the bond measure, we were at 75.9. For the November 26 election, it's actually lower than this 88%. It's 84%. So that sort of suggests to start with, and you'll see this throughout the presentation, that June is probably a better environment. The next question dealt with the district's spending of public funds. And again, adding the very and somewhats together, you see that 73% had a favorable view of the job you're doing. Again, in the November election, which is not on this chart, it was 70%, so a little better in June. In the survey we did for the bond, it was 58%, so it has certainly improved in the ensuing time. The next question is agreement with the statement that the district needs additional funding. Again, adding the strongly and somewhats together here, we're at 70% agree that the district needs additional funding to do its job. That's obviously slightly over the 2/3 threshold for a parcel tax. It's not with a huge cushion, but it is certainly above 2/3. Again, comparing that to the November universe in this survey, we were at 66.9, and in November of 24 election for the bond measure, it was 60.5. The next part of the survey switched gears and looked specifically at the parcel tax that we would be proposing. And you can see the wording of that measure on the right-hand side of the slide. It meets all the statewide legal requirements. So notably, that's can't be more than 75 words. It has to have the tax rate, which the current rate is 1842, as you know. It shows how much we would add at 148 per parcel. And it also has to say how much it would raise annually, and that's why $5.9 million is in there, and it has to have a sunset. So in this case, it's 10 years. The rest of the wording with some minor exceptions is ours to work with. And you can see the bullets that we chose for the projects or programs that we would be funding or continuing to fund with this measure. And when we add the definitely yes and probably yes together, we get 81%. Which is a very strong start since this is all they know about it. Don't get too set on the 81% though. We'll see how that changes over the course of the survey, but it's certainly a good place to begin. That's 81% for the June universe. Again, not on the slide is the November universe, which is 79%. So you see again this pattern of June being a better environment. The next set of questions was a long list that was asked in a random order of the various things we might spend the money on. And once we get the data, we then go back and assign numeric values to the response categories, which you see across the bottom of the slide. A much more likely response gets a 2, a somewhat more likely a 1, somewhat less likely a -1, and much less likely a -2. And we create this intensity scale that you see here. And the reason we do that is it's a really good way to rank the items, taking into account all of the response categories in one number. An example of the benefit is if we were to just use the much more likely and somewhat more likely added together, you might have something that's 40% much more likely and 20% somewhat more likely. That's 60%, but you could have the opposite. It could be 20% much more likely and 40% somewhat more likely. That's still 60%, but it's not the same 60%. So that consideration is eliminated by using this ranking. However, we still do add the much more likely and somewhat more likely together to take it out of the abstract statistics realm and put it in the real world. So we have this arrow and the percentages that show the much more likely and somewhat more likely added together. At the top of this list, we have maintained math, science, and technology programs at 1.24 on our intensity scale, or 83% at least somewhat more likely to support the measure. And then we had some split sampling so we could ask variations in wording, and that's the difference between the burgundies and the greens and the blues. The example is maintain core academics, including math, science, and reading, a variation on the same theme at 1.22, virtually the same. Attracting and retaining highly qualified teachers, protecting enrichment programs, including art and music, preserving small class size, preventing class sizes from increasing, attracting and retaining exceptional teachers, again, slight variation in the wording, maintaining hands-on science instruction, preventing layoffs of teachers and counselors and librarians, and preventing class size increases. All of those are in what we call tier 1, and what that means is that statistically speaking, they are all tied. There are numeric differences, and at the end of the day, when we're thinking about what this might be for, those numeric differences are important. The next slide shows the continuation of tier 1 with keeping school libraries open, maintaining physical education and student health programs, maintain school librarians and keep school libraries open, and prevent teacher layoffs. All of those with the previous slide are in tier 1. All of them are, mid 70s up. That's a good place to be. Tier 2 is certainly good, starting in the mid 70s, but working down to just under 70%. So we're getting closer to that 2/3 threshold. Clearly important programs, which we wouldn't want to discount, but they're just not as important to the average voter.
Brian, if I could just quickly comment on the
Yeah,
last
sure.
two slides. There's a couple of trends that I want to point out. First of all, and actually, if you can go back to the prior slide, Brian,
Yeah.
the top priorities that we tested this time are virtually identical to what we saw in the polling prior to the 2018 parcel tax renewal. So even though we're sitting here 8 years later, the general priorities of the public and how they want to see their parcel tax dollars spent largely have not changed. The other piece that I wanted to comment on is that the one common theme you see in all the top testing priorities here is that it's about maintenance, it's about protecting, it's about preservation. It's not about expanding or increasing. And that's consistent with what we've seen in districts throughout California over the last year. The mindset of voters is, I'll maintain what we're doing, we want to continue what we're doing, but given economic and political realities, there isn't a lot of appetite for expansion and increasing.
Okay, great. So going back to the next question now, this is similar methodology. This is informational statements. They're positive in nature. We'll come to the negatives in a moment. But these two were asked in a random order. We've also created an intensity scale. It's a little bit different. It doesn't have the negative side of the equation because it doesn't make sense to voters for these kinds of positives. Same thing is true on the negative side. So it's just much more likely, somewhat more likely, no effect. And what that means is everything still works the same way. You just can't compare a 1.31 here with the previous set of questions. But you can look at the percentages that are much more likely and somewhat more likely and compare that. And in this chart, we start at the same 80% level. In fact, the top argument is if this measure does not pass, Kentfield Schools will lose almost a quarter of its current budget. Obviously, at 83%, that's a really important piece of information. All the money raised will go to elementary and middle schools in the Kentfield School District. The federal government is dismantling the Federal Department of Education. which funds state and local efforts. Kentfield School District has award-winning teachers. Kentfield School District may lose some of our best teachers to other nearby districts. The school district has already made budget adjustments without eliminating teachers or staff. And then the measure requires public disclosure of all spending and public reports to the community. And having a great teacher in the classroom is the most important element of providing quality education. That's the top end of the tier 1 grouping. Again, these are all statistically tied, but there are numeric differences, and those are of value to know. The next slide shows the remainder of tier 1, and they are, at the right at the 80% level in round numbers, and a variety of good arguments there. As we get into tier 2, we start dropping down into the mid 70s and to the low 70s, as you can see here. So these things are just, again, good arguments in and of themselves, but there are better things to talk about on that first slide. And as we continue, this was a long list of items. You see that we're now in the low 70s and then into the 60s, and in fact, right below the 2/3 threshold. So again, while these may be valid arguments, they're just not as important to the average voter who would be casting a ballot in June. So the next, since at this point in the survey, we've introduced the ballot question, we've talked about what we'd spend the money on, we've talked about the positives, and we come back to our ballot question, exact same wording a second time. And the goal here is to see what happens after people know more information, mostly positive. And you can see that our initial test was 81.4 and our interim test is 81.4. The difference is we went from a 38% in round numbers, definitely yes, to 47% definitely yes. So people's opinion really became more intense, more and stronger, and that's obviously a good thing given the information. Now, the next set of questions, same methodology as the informational statements, but obviously these are critical statements. These are things that opponents might be expected to say. And the methodology, as I said, is the same. The higher the numbers, the worse it is for the measure. And since the measure needs 2/3 to be successful, 33.4% is enough to obviously defeat the measure. And at the top of this list, and the most negative for the measure is will really cost homeowners $2,000 in the first year and has a built-in 3% annual adjustment. That's 42%, at least somewhat more likely to oppose the measure. If the district just increased property taxes to repay a $48 million bond, now they want more. People in Marin are already paying county sales tax increases and community college and high school district measures at 0.51, with residents and businesses struggling with higher gas prices than before COVID and tariffs, higher inflation in general at 0.49. Too many high-paid administrators, 0.47, and on down the list. So, at the upper part of this list, obviously, those are reasonably strong arguments. By the time we get to the bottom part of the list, we are below the 1/3 threshold that might defeat this kind of measure. So now we've started with the ballot question without a lot of information. See where we started. We added information. We saw that the strength of support got better, but it wasn't higher in total. Now we've talked about the negatives, and so we come back to our ballot question a third time, and you can see the three tests here, 81.4 to start, 81.4, but stronger in the middle. But now after hearing negatives, people are at 73%. And so that's certainly a good place to be in terms of a 2/3 threshold. When we compare that to the November universe, remember this is June that you're looking at. November is 71.3, so a little bit less. And when you apply the margin of error for November, it could be as low as 65% when you compare the margin of error for June that you see here, it could be 66.4. So right at that 2/3 threshold, but in November, it is a little bit below. The follow-up question was, well, what would happen if instead of 148, you just increased it $96? Obviously, what we're doing is trying to get below a psychological ceiling of 99.99, and that's what 96 represents. And we do get a little bit of a bump from the 73% to 75, but not a huge increase. It's certainly not statistically significant. What is significant is the definitely yes does increase, and so it is obviously stronger at that level. And then the final question was, instead of $96, what if we just renewed it at the current 1842 without increasing taxes? And you can see here we're now at 77%, and the definitely yes is at 53%. And the last question, which is sort of a two-edged sword, and is their forecast on the future of the economy. One edge is that 36% think it's going to be worse. That number is not the worst we've seen this year. We've seen that be almost 50% in other districts. And we don't have a whole lot of tracking for you. We've got last year where the worst was 12%. And what that matches is the pattern we saw throughout the pandemic. Before the pandemic, people were pretty positive. When the pandemic hit and the shutdown, it skyrocketed into the mid-40s. We don't have that data for you, but that's what happened in most districts. And then throughout the pandemic, it came down. You're worse in the November 24 universe. The survey that we did summer of 24 was one of the lower levels of pessimism at 12.8%. But like everybody else, you've jumped back up. And that happened everywhere across the board in 2025 as the new administration came into power. So that's the bad news, that people are still pessimistic. The good news, if it is a silver lining, is that this pessimism is built into those positive numbers that get us to the 2/3 threshold that we've been talking about. So people know where their eyes wide open. They know things are going to get worse next year, but they are still supportive of the measure. And that concludes the data portion of the presentation. I will turn it over to Charles to talk about timeline and other details.
Yeah, first of all, just a few quick reflections on the survey data. Obviously having a measure that out of the gates is 80% plus is a rare thing. We don't see that very often. These are frankly some of the most positive poll results I've seen all year. So I think that there's an opportunity here to renew the existing tax, increase the rate by approximately that $148 amount that we tested here. That would provide an additional roughly $500,000 per year to the district with that increase. And I do think that's sort of a sweet spot. I don't think we need to go below that. You saw there was a couple percentage point difference when we tested lower increase amounts, but it really wasn't significant. That suggests to me that people are pretty comfortable with the magnitude of increase that we're proposing here. I think the other consideration we need to think about is when we did introduce those negative arguments, support comes down to 73%. And when you consider that plus or minus 6-point margin of error in the survey, if you apply the downside of that margin of error, now we're right around the 2/3 mark. When I went back and looked at the last two surveys that Brian has conducted for you prior to the 2018 parcel tax and the 2024 bond measure, that final ballot test where we factor in potential negative arguments was within 1% of the actual election results on election day. So I think that's the most predictive data point in the survey, and I would really focus on that. You could certainly look at the 80% support and say, well, we're leaving money on the table. We should look at a larger increase. I think that's risky given how much negative pressure there is when an opposition campaign is simulated. So that's our recommendation. Just to kind of put this in context of where we are in the parcel tax planning process. As Brian mentioned, there are many data points in the survey that suggest that the voters that are likely to vote in the June primary next year are more supportive of this proposal by a few percentage points than the voters that would vote in the November general election. there's a variety of reasons for that. It's not uncommon in Marin County. The smaller voter turnout that you tend to get in the primary elections, they tend to be older, more engaged voters, more knowledgeable, and that typically shows through in increased support for these types of measures. So if we want to be prepared to qualify to place a measure on that June 6th ballot next year, the deadline to qualify for the election is March 6th. So that's the deadline by which the board has to adopt a resolution calling for the election. So we're at the front end of this process right now. We've conducted the feasibility assessment, the polling being sort of the centerpiece of that. Based on the strength of the results, we think there's good reason to move forward with preparing a measure for the June ballot. Our next steps would be to work with the district to develop and implement an informational outreach effort to raise awareness of the fact that you have this parcel tax funding that's set to expire, 25% of your budget, so the consequences if this funding weren't to be renewed. About 70% of your voters don't have children in the school district, so there's a lot of people there that probably aren't aware of that reality, so we need to build that awareness. As we're doing that, we would also be working with the district's legal counsel to draft the resolution that would incorporate all the details that we've talked about here, the rate of increase, the continuing of the cost of living adjustment, the 10-year duration, and then that would come back to you after the first of the year for consideration. We're targeting the January 13th meeting to bring back a draft resolution for review and input from you, and then bring the resolution to your February 10th board meeting for actual consideration and adoption. And if we do that, we beat the March 6th deadline to be prepared to go to the ballot. And at that point, there's an important transition. We can't use public funds to advocate for the passage of the parcel tax. So just like we've done with prior parcel taxes and your last bond measure, an independent campaign committee would have to form to undertake that advocacy effort with private dollars because we can't use district dollars. So that's a summary of kind of where we're at, what's coming, and our recommendation. But Brian and I are happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you. Board members?
Thank you. You answered a lot of my questions, actually. But I want to just make sure I understand one thing. You mentioned when we did Measure E and we did the similar polling, when you said that I think you said the final, what was the terminology used? The final test percentage was within 1% of the actual what happened at the election. Did I hear that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, great. And do you remember what the margin of error of that Measure E was? Was it similar?
Yeah, I actually have that survey right here. Let's see, the margin of error was, it was also about plus or minus 6%.
Okay.
The final ballot test in that survey had us at 59.7, and I believe on election day we received 60.4. So
okay,
pretty darn close.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I had the opportunity to review this previously, so yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything from David?
Oh, David, do you have any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
I guess one thing I'd like to ask Charles to do. Charles, you said at the very start, but now that we've gone through the presentation, do you mind reiterating just 2 points? One is the methodology and the reason why you're continuing to recommend to us to maintain the current methodology, as well as timeline in terms of, you mentioned this is a 10-year parcel tax that we currently have, but we're going out a little bit early. It was 8 years ago that we were working on such a thing. So can you just touch on those 2 points, just because after seeing all this, then hearing that again might be helpful.
Sure, sure. So based on our experience, both in conducting polling for other school districts and just looking at election results, those districts that have had a long-standing flat rate parcel tax like you've had, that have tried to transition to a square footage methodology, they've had mixed success, if not negative success. And I think one of the reasons is because one of the big advantages you have in a renewal election like this, so you're taking something that voters are already comfortable with and extending it. And when you change that methodology, it becomes more complicated to communicate, how much does this cost you? Instead of it being a single number that applies to everyone, it's a variable number, right? So it's harder for some voters to get their head around. And if voters are uncertain or confused, the no vote tends to be the easy vote. Also, just looking at the experience in some other districts here, Sometimes you will have larger property owners that will look at that tax bill and it represents a big increase because of now that different methodology, and that can sometimes generate opposition. So, that's a risk that you want to consider carefully. And again, when we look at the math, again, because most of your properties are single family homes, you don't have a lot of large properties that would, generate the same revenue and reduce the tax rate for some of the smaller properties. Everything stays within a pretty narrow band. So there's not a lot of upside to offset the potential challenges you would have by that fundamental change in the methodology. So that's our recommendation. And we've seen this consistently. I mean, we've looked at this for Palo Alto Unified and Los Altos School District and many in Marin County. And the same trend tends to occur over and over again, which is if there's kind of longstanding understanding and comfort with a flat rate tax, that change is hard for voters. So that's the sort of tax structure, tax methodology question. In terms of timing, yeah, we could wait until 2027 or 2028 to do this. The problem is that then, you're having to project a year out, basically a reduction in $5 million of funding, because past that expiration date, unless you have voter approval, you can't build that into your budget. So, it would be a challenging process to go through having to, make all those reductions. If you're fortunate enough to renew your measure right before the expiration, you can rescind those. But, it's just a lot of, unsettling of the school district when by doing this a year earlier, we can avoid that. Also, a 2/3 vote is not an easy thing to accomplish, right? I mean, getting 2/3 of people to agree on anything, much less taxes, in the current environment is challenging. So, I think it's smart planning to give yourself some time, take the proposal to voters. If there's something about it they don't like and they say no, you have an opportunity to come back with something more modest before the whole revenue goes away, right? So it just gives you that second bite at the apple. I think given that this is 25% of your budget, that's just prudent planning.
Thank you for that.
Actually, do have a question. How many more times do you survey before, as we lead up to it?
If the results of this survey were ambiguous, I would say, we need to survey again before we make final decisions to put this on the ballot. Compared to a lot of poll results we see, these results are pretty clear, and they give us a pretty clear path forward.
But the sample is large enough, you're saying?
It is. As I mentioned, our last two surveys prior to the last two bond and parcel tax elections here, the survey has nailed the ultimate results within a percentage point. So it's proven to be accurate here in the district. I think that the other thing that we have to guard for is, we live in very uncertain times, right? It's a tumultuous environment. There's the potential for economic change. There could be a downturn in the economy. There could be more talk about recession, political instability, and all these factors, when there's kind of a big shock to the system, that's when voters' opinions change. If something like that were to occur between now and February, when you have to make a decision about whether to put this on the ballot, that would justify coming back and doing some additional survey research.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, one last question for me. Just you do this, I think, all across the state. Is there anything else? Like, one of the things I think about is, we passed a measure, the high school passed a measure. I think we all, I mean, I personally got my property tax statement. I've noticed the change. Is there anything else? That's something that's in my head of just like the overall, how residents are going to respond to that. But is there anything else we should be thinking about that you've seen that is happening outside of this area that has caught you or that has surprised you in a good way or a bad way, just that we should be thinking about?
I mean, we tested a pretty comprehensive set of both arguments in favor and arguments against that represent what we typically hear in the course of a campaign like this. And so, what we saw here is the fact that, your tax rate is getting to be a pretty significant number, almost $2,000, right? That's something that makes people think twice. The fact that you already passed, you passed a bond fairly recently, and just the cumulative impact of lots of taxes. Those are generally the concerns that we hear from voters when we propose measures like this, particularly in high-performing districts like yours. But the flip side of that is what we're seeing is that, because of what's happening with federal funding for education, the ongoing instability of, state funding for school districts, voters understand the importance of locally controlled funding. So when you explain to them that, unlike state funding, unlike federal funding, this is money we can count on. No one can take it away from us. We dictate how it's used. It's 100% locally controlled. That's a real positive argument in favor. And typically those issues kind of offset each other. And what we're seeing here is you've got a district that places an incredibly high priority on public education. You have great schools. They support really strong property values here. So voters are inclined to support the schools. So if we can justify this as a reasonable proposal, which I think our survey results say that they think that it is a reasonable proposal, we should have a good shot at success.
Thank you.
So I think, as Charles said, one of the big next steps is really around that information to our community. And so one of the things that we talked about was the opportunity to have Charles share, go through some of this information with our staff in particular, so that they can ask questions and further understand. And then just thinking about the various meetings that we have internally and with community members like PTA or like DLAC, just so folks can understand what's coming their way. And we have to be mindful of not just those that are within our school community, but the people that live within the community. So I think you said 70% don't have children in the school. So just how we're getting out there to build that awareness piece and the information. So that will be our big next step that we'll be working on together. So, unless we have anything else.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks.
And
Thanks so
again,
much.
if anyone has questions, please direct them to Superintendent Rose.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next are the organization reports. We have KTA, Celeste, and Marjorie, one or the other.
Hi. Aha. Okay. I'm Celeste Perez, and here with Marjorie Bukowski. We are co-presidents of Kentfield Teachers Association. And we just wanted to start off by saying that the Kentfield Teachers Association shares your concerns about the importance of passing a parcel tax renewal. And we are happy to continue to have open communication between KTA and the district and the community. And appreciate the reviewing of the results that we just did from the survey. So thank you for having them, and thank you for your presentation. And now we would like to move to the next slide. There we go. We would like to present the articles that we will be opening for this year's negotiations between KTA and the district. So our goals are shared goals with Kentfield School District to encourage our students to reach high, work hard, and be kind. We want to further advance our shared mission to inspire and challenge all students to live, learn, and lead to their fullest potential. And so in order to do this, we're opening the following contract articles. Starting with Article 9, less than full-time employment. Part-time employment provides flexibility to adapt to shifting enrollment while supporting our shared mission. We seek to better align part-time educators' conditions with the needs of the district. Article 10, hours of employment. We seek to ensure that all teachers have time to develop innovative lessons, provide essential feedback to students and their families, and to differentiate lessons to meet the needs of each student. And that's LCAP Goal 1, or consistent with, I should say. Article 13, salary. We seek to increase compensation so that Kentfield School District is competitive in the county in order to attract and retain our exceptionally gifted teachers, which directly aligns with LCAP Goal 3. Article 14, benefits. We seek to maintain a competitive benefits package in line with LCAP Goal 3 to recruit and retain top talent, boost employee satisfaction, and improve overall district performance. Article 15, leaves. We seek updates that support staff well-being and district operations, aligning with LCAP Goal 3 to attract and retain excellent teachers who inspire all of our students. And finally, Article 16, class size. We seek to ensure class sizes are optimal for student engagement, safety, and access to the curriculum across all grade levels. And that is in line with LCAP Goal 2. And we just want to finish by saying we are united with you and committed to inspiring and challenging all students to live, learn, and lead to their fullest potential. Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste.
Good evening. I'm Gretchen Harris, the president of the Kentfield Education Support Professionals Association. It's been a long night, and I don't want to make it much longer. I do want to say that KESPA is looking forward to our next round of negotiations. We know that this is absolutely everyone's favorite pastime. So while we sunshined earlier last spring, we patiently waited for KTA to also be ready and are anticipating some positive collaboration with our administration, certificated, and classified staff. The show of unity within the district showcases our collective agreements to meet each of the LCAP's 4 goals. We know some sessions need to be separate, of course, but working together shows a positive reaffirmation to our Kentfield School District community that we really do feel our students deserve the best, and we are well prepared to help all Kentfield School District learners have the opportunity to shine.
Thank you, Gretchen. Okay, next we have the community community reports. First up is KIC.
Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Joe Mariska, co-president at KIC, and just have a couple quick updates for you. First off, I want to thank everyone for coming out for KIC Family Fun Day a couple weeks ago. It was an awesome event, and it wouldn't be possible without the support of the district, all the parent volunteers, the KSD custodial staff, PTA was there, and it's many folks' first introduction to KIC, so it's important that we all show up and ensure it's a good time. And I can report back it was definitely a success. So thank you everyone for showing up. And then the other note, so our board launched our family giving campaign this week. As a reminder, this is our parent donation campaign that accounts for about 85% of our $1.4 million contribution to the district this year. We've begun outreach via email, phone call, text messages, and we have our family giving date set for Thursday, November 6th. So this is the date we encourage parents to donate by, and we'll have kids and parents at Carline that morning, encouraging folks to get their donation in and spread the word. And then lastly, on the fundraising front, we've raised $450,000 to date, which is about 32% of our full year target from 79 donors. So thank you for those that have stepped up and donated early. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. KSPTA.
Hello, thanks for your time tonight. I'm Tracy Wilda. I have a brief update. So in the conclusion of September, we did host all of our new grade level parties at Basich, which were, I think I talked about them maybe last month or the month prior, but it was the first time where we've had the same format for all the grades, and we've combined some grades, and the feedback was really positive. I think we had over 125 people attend each event, so it was great. Happy about that. We also, for the first time, we hosted back to school coffee on the Basich campus every Friday in September to support our membership drive. And that was also perceived very positively, although our membership numbers at the close of September are not exactly what we wanted them to be. We've got about 150 families who are PTA members as of now, which is 20% of families within the district, but we are down about 20% to last year. So, PTA, it's always a challenge to really differentiate the difference in what we do compared to KIC, especially during membership when we're looking for donations. So this is something that we're continuing to analyze and see how we can really differentiate the difference. Although at the same time, so many of, although we have our distinct allocations of funding to parents and community members, it can be confusing, even though the amount we're looking for is smaller. So anyway, something we're working on as a team and how we can better articulate that, and also how at the same time our purpose is really to drive community and engagement and things like that. So when we ask for money, it feels a little off balance compared to our core values, but nonetheless, it's about $15,000 of our budget comes from membership. So anyway, just sharing with you all, more of our problem than yours, but nonetheless, that's some of the things that are circling around at the PTA. And then in terms of newness that we're introducing this year, which is something that I am very excited about as we move through the year, is continuing to evaluate how PTA is relevant for today's community. We are having our second PTA meeting in conjunction with the principal chat this Friday. So we'll be here at Kent with Grant, and we're excited to do that. We'll have a small portion of the meeting dedicated to the things that we have to approve for the general meeting, but the purpose is really for us to support these areas of engagement that are already happening within the district. And then to that point, we're also going to be including a organization on Friday called IRL, which stands for in real life. And it is part of our tech education and tech wellness committee that we are relaunching with a new purpose this year. Historically, we have supported Wait Until 8th, which we find isn't necessarily a one size fits all for all families in regards to tech engagement. And we also want to just provide multiple opportunities for different families for whatever, wherever they're at. And IRL right now is a Marin-based organization that seems to be doing really well and has a strong partnership with a couple of the members of our PTA community. So that's something that you'll read about in the newsletter. If you're reading the newsletters, you can hear about on Friday if you attend the meeting, and we'll continue to provide more opportunities around that, which is obviously an important topic for our community. And then finally, another new thing that is going to be coming up, we actually just brainstormed about last week, but we're going to host in the beginning of November, and that is a new family continuation meeting. So we have new family orientations at both campuses in the beginning of the school year. And although those are great, we were kind of talking anecdotally about what happens as the school year continues, and new parents then might finally, or new families might actually have some questions that they didn't think about asking early on in the school year. So we'll be hosting that in the Basich Library in the beginning of November, when we are also having our book fair. So there will be an opportunity to buy some books, drink some cocoa, and hopefully build a stronger support system for those families that are new to our district. So that's what's happening with the PTA right now. Any questions? Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, now we will hear a report from Superintendent Rose.
Okay, I will be very brief. The brunt of my report is really around the update on Measure E, and then I'll pass it over to Michael, who's going to give a quick verbal update on the parcel tax, and then we'll circle back with the principals and talk about our CASP state assessment results. So. There we go. Okay, so KSD planning for the future, that was really to touch on what we heard from Brian Godby and Charles Heath related to the parcel tax. So that presentation is done, so we'll move on. Measure E bond update. I'll give a highlight of the most recent information that we received from our construction manager. And then I will pull up the presentation that I'll be sharing and getting some additional information from our site administrators about the results of our students with the CASP and how we fared up compared to our local districts. So Measure E, financing. So we know our proceeds are available and for planned expenditures. Right now, what we're really focusing on are the roofs, the solar, and the bathroom modernization, really the summer projects 2026. If there are things that we can do during the school year, we will, but really because of DSA requirements, it's really looking more towards summertime. Citizens Oversight, the next meeting will be December 11th. It will be a Zoom meeting, and we'll just have an update related to our projects and where we are, the budget status, and really just visibility on progress on projects. As you all are aware, we talked about some signage that we'd be putting out to show either projects forthcoming, or we completed X, and this is some signage just to really thank our community. And project list update. So the biggest one is around the solar and the energy consultants. So we had an opportunity, myself and Michael and Dave Harden, our new director of facilities, met with our construction manager and our architects just yesterday to go over some information from the energy consultants. They are right now working on the cost benefit analysis related to the solar. They will be coming to the board and explaining some of that specifically. They're experts on it, so I don't even want to try to explain it. But they'll be talking through what we can expect related to cost benefit on that piece. The piece that came up that was new and a bit different was the notion that as we think forward about the solar panels, right now they're all roof mounted. And I think there was some assumption that we would maintain roof mounted solar panels. But what came forward was that we may look at a mixed model where we might at one site have roof mounted, and then at another site we might have ground mounted. So i.e. the idea of having solar panels similar to where you see in parking lots or such, or on the campus in areas to create shade for our students. So just for the board to be aware, that's something there's some preliminary conversation around that. The ground mounting does cost more, so it's important for us to be mindful of that, but they have various rationale as to why, and it's mainly due to the age of our buildings. So anyways, just so you have that update. More information forthcoming. Like I said, those experts around the energy consultant, we will have them come to a meeting with Damien to share more detail about that. And then I think from there, it's around the data update. So I would ask Michael if he can come forward to do the finance update now.
Great.
Yes, yes.
Oh, can you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah. So what we do every year is to account what we spend, how much we received, and that's what is it in front of you. So for 24-25, we received $5.27 million, and this was spent accordingly based on the measure A. So $5.2 million received and $5.2 million spent. All the money was spent for salary and benefits for our certificated teachers. That's basically what the report is. Any questions I can answer?
No questions from me. Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're moving to our data presentation. And I think in being mindful of time, what we were going to do is instead of having the general site updates, is the site principals will speak to kind of their analysis and updates related to how they responded to these results. So I'll offer high level it's the wrong room. High level overview and then punt it over to them. So these results are our state standardized assessment results that are done, state assessments that are administered in the springtime. It's for our 3rd through 8th grade students in math and language arts. Also testing our science for our 5th and our 8th grade students. So the results you're going to see tonight are really around English language arts and mathematics. They'll share a little bit about the summative LPAC assessment as well, but just that's kind of high level information that you'll receive. So this information is really focused on LCAP goal number 1, how we're engaging, supporting, and challenging all students with the intention to eliminate that opportunity gap. It's important for folks to know that this is summative data. We utilize formative data throughout the duration of the school year to really track progress of our students so that we can make adjustments in real time. As I mentioned, this is from May of 2025, and ultimately we're consistently being reflective on what is the service to our students, what are we doing to adjust when we're seeing students may not be making the progress we want them to, or if they are making really great progress, what do we think is attributing to that, and trying to see if we can replicate it. Right here, this data chart is really looking at English language arts and mathematics and comparing it overall to the various districts that we would compare ourselves to, elementary districts here in in Marin County. So we've got Kentfield, Larkspur, Ross, Mill Valley, Miller Creek, Ross Valley School District, and Ross School District. So for English language arts, we're about fourth here as we look at this data. And for math, we're ranking around fifth here. So we have to take into account, we have different demographics, we have different programs we're implementing. And so we'll go into a little bit more how we look at this data and analyze it. This here is a slide showing data over time, specifically around English language arts. And so what you can see here is from 2017 to where we are today, and how specifically for Basage, and you're seeing kind of the trajectory that happens. If you look at last year, about 69% of our students were meeting or exceeding standards. This past spring, it was 73%. That's pretty significant, and I'm sure Maria will touch on that a bit in just a tad. For Kent, sustained at that 81% already, that's a pretty high level. And I think one of the highlights that we had from last year around this was just demonstrating the growth that's happened, especially compared to pre-COVID times. This here is continuing to talk about English language arts, and this time it's breaking it down by subgroups and really looking at how kids are progressing in their specific student groups, not subgroups, but student groups. And so we looked at our comparable districts and looking at our Caucasian students, our multiracial students, Hispanic, Latino, our English language learners, as well as our reclassified students and students with disabilities. So the two areas where we saw a little bit of a dip here were our students are two or more races, as well as our reclassified students. And that was something that we highlighted last year, is that we were seeing students that had been reclassified were demonstrating really good progress. So it was interesting to see that that had a little bit of a dip here for English language arts. Related to math, you can see same kind of graph or information that's showing performance and progress over time. And so for Basage, you can see the percentage of meeting or exceeding standard was about the same, a little bit below last year. And for Kent, you can see a pretty significant increase there. And again, I'm sure both principals will speak to what was happening at their school sites. And as you know, we're piloting new math programs over at Basage. And so there's some new programs I think that Kent also implemented school-wide last year too. And then this next slide is, again, doing the same thing we did with English language arts, high level, looking at these various student groups and how we were performing. And in all of these student groups, except for our English language learners, we saw increases, right? So in these student groups, we're going in the right direction, specifically around mathematics, which is something that we should be proud of. So again, super high level information to provide. This is, at some level, this is old data. These students are all now in their subsequent grade level. We've got programs happening to support them, and then continuing that progress monitoring and more formative assessments that are happening at our school sites. So with that, I will now hand it over to our site administrators to share updates about this data and how they analyzed it and the steps that they've taken to be responsive. So.
You know what? We always go first. Would you guys like to go first?
Well, I'll take the lead with Kent ELA, and then Wendy's going to speak more specifically to Kent Math, but we'll both kind of chime in as it becomes relevant. I appreciate Raquel's point. Our English language arts school-wide data reflected sustaining the highest student achievement that we had seen over the years that we've been tracking. So considering that we had a group of 8th graders move out and a new group of 5th graders move in, and we sustained a high achievement level for our students, I think is definitely something to celebrate, and something that we are celebrating as an English language arts team, as well as a school-wide team that is very much emphasizing literacy across subject areas, across school-wide initiatives like our all-school read, as well as word work and vocabulary that's happening within our English language arts classrooms, as well as vocabulary analysis that's happening in all of our classes. So I just wanted to share that the curricular approach that we use includes quite sophisticated comprehension work, which, if you take a look at what's expected of students in the CASP, it does require some pretty profound and sophisticated analysis of literature, of authors' craft and authors' moves, as well as comprehension strategies. One of the areas that we've continued to highlight as an area that we need to address within our curriculum is the way that we approach word work. This year we have different grade levels piloting different word work curricula to supplement our curriculum to find ways to help students solve unknown words, recognize different word parts, recognize word roots and where they come from, to continue to build vocabulary as a part, in addition to the comprehension work that's happening in all of our classes. We do want to acknowledge that we do continue to see an opportunity and resource gap for different demographics of students at our school. And so one of the pieces that I wanted to highlight about that was that for the first time, our site council has adopted sub-goals for our first goal. Our SIPSA plan includes our first goal, which is about students meeting or exceeding grade level standards in reading and mathematics. That's what these scores are all about. But we do have a sub-goal that looks at our Latinx population of students with specific language to raise proficiency of Latinx students in their performance of reading and their performance of mathematics, as we're tracking utilizing the MAP growth. And so the idea being, as comparing performance in the fall of this year to the spring of this school year in March 2026, we will be really tracking our ability to address the needs of our Latinx students and increase students performing at proficiency, so that when we look at this, this kind of global 10,000-foot view data fall of next year, we are hopeful to see some closure of that opportunity gap, particularly for some of the populations like our Latinx students, where that gap has persisted over time. In order to do so, we have a pretty robust MTSS process, which includes progress monitoring through MAP growth, as you see there, which leads us to a really targeted ability to address student needs in the area of literacy through a variety of Tier 2 interventions. Some to highlight would include our 0-period reading intervention for students in 5th through 8th grade, as well as our extended reading, which happens during the school day. And we also host targeted classes to support our English language learners. You'll notice that our English language learner performance data is another area that we're looking closely to monitor, and also recognizing that the performance of our Latinx students and our English language learning students, while there is some overlap, they are also unique and different. That we do have language learners who are not Latino, and we do have Latinx students who are also fluent in English. And so we want to be sure that we're supporting both of those populations as they do overlap, as well as the demographics that are different. And just to give a brief summary of LPAC data, which I know that Raquel had mentioned, 8 of our 24 language learners last year did meet reclassification criteria. 21 of those 24 students increased at least one level, and 22 out of the 24 increased their score on the LPAC, but may not have advanced enough of that score threshold to go into the next level. So overall, we're quite pleased with continued growth and sustaining achievement for students in English language arts, and we're looking for ways to boost that performance even further going future in the years ahead. Wendy, did you want to add anything to that? Okay, excellent.
Thank you, Grant.
Do you want?
Oh,
to
no, I
base
just said
the
thank you.
GLA
Okay.
First and then, or do you want? Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay, so some of the things that we reflected on as we looked at this data was also, like Kent, identifying and acknowledging that we too continue to have an identified resource gap in some of our subgroups. So we'll be talking a little bit about some of the ways that we are working and reflecting on that moving forward. We also were really excited about some progress on our LPAC this year. 12 of our 34 students achieved a level 4, which means they'll be celebrating their reclassification this year, which is really exciting. And then 31 of our 34 students either were able to increase a level or increase their score within a level. Grant mentioned that there's that band within a level that's a high-low, and so even if they may not have jumped a level, they may have achieved that next level within the level. And one of the really bigger highlights, I think, is that we were able to achieve a 4% increase in 1 year, from 69 to 73% of our students who are meeting or achieving standards. And I think that it's important to note there also that that happened within the time that we switched from balanced literacy to structured literacy. So already seeing some really incremental growth there. So that was exciting for us to reflect on. And then in our ELA, so our tier 1, interventions, which is that instruction that's happening in the classroom, we're really taking a look at the way that our curriculum adoption, CKLA, is impacting those the students and the growth. We're hearing great feedback from teachers in the classroom about what they're seeing as students are coming in this year after receiving instruction, CKLA instruction last year, and how students are coming in with a lot of prior knowledge and a lot of excitement about the curriculum and a lot of just really great skills that we are new. And so making sure that the kids that the teachers are acknowledging that and seeing that that's happening is really exciting. And we're looking forward to the years to come and seeing how that impacts the scores even more. And then let's see, there's a lot of tier 1 intervention strategies built into the curriculum. And I think that as teachers are getting more familiar with the curriculum, they're getting more comfortable using those. And I think that, in addition to just the great teaching that's happening, that the curriculum is going to help impact this as well. We have, so the next two things kind of fit together. So our MTSS is robust, and we are continue to use our DIBELS data and our unit assessments to create students of concern lists to identify students that may need some more support. These students can come both as recommendations from teachers that will attend MTSS, and they can also come from our data analysis as a team, and we can identify those students and make sure that they get connected with the right interventions. This year, as part of our DIBELS assessments in the beginning of the year, we had our universal screener for reading difficulties portion of the DIBELS, and so that was administered in grades 1 and 2. There were about 8 students that were identified, and we were able to have, during our intake conferences, we were able to have a team of people meet with the parents and give them the information that they needed and share plans for intervention for those students. One of the things that came up as we were moving through this process, this new process of this universal screener, and what was exciting, I was talking to our, Marie and I and Yvonne were talking, and that all 8 of the students that were identified in the conferences that we had as we were sharing with the families, that all 8 of the families shared that they have reading difficulties in their history and in their family. So the tool works. It's like we were really, that was really great information for us to learn. So, and then we are data-driven tier 2 interventions. We have 2 really strong interventions in our ELD work that Yvonne gets to do, and obviously we have our reading intervention teacher. And so both of our interventions, we use the DIBELS data to drive, and obviously our MTSS process, and it's consistent with the assessments that we do, that the teachers use in the classroom too. So we have a lot of great information as we create these groups. And depending on what the students are working on and their needs and their levels, then each of these interventions is able to create groups that are similar and that can, kind of operate and individually with, like, the ELD teacher can work with the ELD kids that are kind of have the same groups and the same skills that they're needing support with, and same in the reading intervention. And we love that we have some flexibility between the two interventions, so that if there is a reading group that the reading intervention teacher is working with, and there might be a student at that grade level, these are all happening during our win time, and so they are our groups, grades 1 through 4, that are getting the support in each of those areas. And so if there are students that don't quite fit, like for instance, if there's a second grade student during second grade win time, and the work that they need on their skills doesn't quite match with the second grade group, there's flexibility between the ELD groups. So that student might have some matched needs with some of the ELD groups that are happening at that time, so that the students can work in both groups and receive intervention. Also, both teachers have identified little bits of time that they have available, where if we have identified a single student who needs some really targeted intervention, that we've been able to work that in for a couple of students. And we have talked about the fact that there's a lot of research around that even 15 minutes a day for 4 times a week can make a huge impact on a student's achievement and growth. And so we're really excited that we have a couple of 2 to 3 students who are getting to receive this kind of intervention with Yvonne, and there might even be one with Katie. And so we're really excited to kind of see how that plays out for those students. And then, so I guess the bottom line is just that we, in response to all of this information that we get to think about, that we're really watching and monitoring all of these students, all of our students, strengthening. We're excited about all of the strengthening that's happening with our new curriculum and the Tier 1 interventions in the classroom. And we are looking forward to some more data to find out how our shift to structured literacy is serving our students. So, you want to add anything? Go right ahead.
Sure. The one thing I wanted to add is that, we've been so focused on the curriculum, which is such a huge component of what we're able to provide to our students. But the other piece is, the best curriculum in the world won't solve all your problems, right? It really comes down to the teaching. And so just today we had our first what we're calling a learning walk. And so a learning walk is an opportunity for teachers to visit other teachers' classrooms and see the teaching, right? Teaching can be, especially in an elementary school setting, teaching can be very isolating. You're in your classroom with your students, all day long, and you don't necessarily get to see what your colleagues are doing because you're teaching when they're teaching. So the learning walk was a way to just see teaching. And we're going to share out at our staff meeting tomorrow. The people who participated in this learning walk today will get to share with the broader staff some of the learnings and takeaways that they saw. And one of the things that just really stood out to me in our debrief with the teachers who participated today is that it provided a reassurance that they themselves are like on the right track or doing what others are doing. Reminders of things that, oh yeah, I used to do that years ago and I kind of stopped doing that strategy, and I want to put that back in my repertoire. And new things like, oh, I hadn't thought about doing it like that. And so I just think we're just well positioned to continue our growth. 4 percentage points is something to celebrate. And I can segue into math if you want for the next slide, because we're not quite there with math. We're at that stagnant, but we're also not at the same point in our journey with changing our math curriculum and our practices in math as we are in language arts. So our math scores have traditionally always been a little higher over the historical comparisons than ELA. So ELA felt more urgent, and so, but math also is top of mind. So, we went to 77 from 78. A little bit of a dip, but not significantly. And we're just excited that we're implementing iReady this year, CMC iReady. So this is our first year. We had a very small pilot team last year, 1 teacher from each grade level. And so now it's in all classrooms. And what I will say that really, really
stands out to me is the student discourse. When you're in a math class at Basic now, students are talking, they're using academic vocabulary, they are listening to others solve a problem and then either adding on or suggesting another way to solve the same problem. So the CMCI Ready program has this try, discuss, connect protocol that goes across all grade levels. So they essentially try a problem, they talk about it with a partner, then they talk about it as a class, and then they connect that interaction, that problem with an actual like lesson that the teacher then delivers, and then they get to go and practice. So I am very confident that we will see some increased scores in the years to come in math at Basic.
So Maria, you probably noticed that I just kind of smiled and I wasn't, it's because I've seen that in multiple classes. And I just thought I was like, oh, that's so interesting how deliberate and intentional. And I haven't participated in the professional development, so I didn't know that. But I smiled because I'm like, oh, that's why I'm
That's
seeing
what you're
some-
seeing. Yeah, yeah. Another one, so one thing, the third bullet point here is that the third grade scores, who are now our fourth graders, were 13 percentage points lower than fourth grade. So 70% of our third graders in the spring met or exceeded standards compared to 83% of our fourth graders. And it really stood out to me. And so I went back and I looked historically, and historically we have had that same kind of thing. So it's not necessarily that this particular cohort of students is somehow struggling or needing something different. What we do know about third grade is it is their first time taking the CASP assessment. And so there's a bit of a learning curve there. In our classrooms, you don't see a lot of, teaching to the test, if you will. There is some practice and some familiarity. And as we implement CMCI Ready, there are digital assessments, online assessments, and we've done map growth. So I think students are getting more comfortable with taking an online assessment. But I've seen that divide between third and fourth grade historically. And so it's just something for us to think about and pay attention to and see, is there something more we could do for our third graders as they get ready to take the CASP test for the first time. And on this slide as well is our strong MTSS process. With the CMCI Ready, there's a diagnostic that's administered to all students 3 times a year. So right out of the bat, we got some data on every single student, and that information, those scores were shared with families. But it's our first time with the diagnostic, so we weren't putting all our eggs in that basket, obviously looking at other data, but it was another data point to develop the student of concern list that Cass was mentioning. So we do that for math as well, and then make sure those kids are connected with an intervention to meet their needs. So whether that's in a WIN group or other ways of differentiating for math, we have the resources and know who they are, so we can monitor their progress throughout the year. Our math intervention is a lot different than our reading intervention. We don't have a dedicated position that's a math intervention, but we do have during WIN time. We have a curriculum that we purchased a couple of years ago now called Do the Math, and we trained a number of teachers, and since then we've also trained some paraprofessionals. So it is an 8-week cycle. It runs in 8-week cycles. There's a pre and post assessment. So some of the students who, based on the pre-assessment, based on their iReady diagnostic, are demonstrating a need for some math intervention. They spend an 8-week session during WIN time getting the program. And it's not just like, it's more the foundational skills. It's not necessarily connected with the math that's happening in the classroom. It's more like addressing the things that might be getting in the way of them accessing the things that are happening in the classroom. And
another great thing that we continue to discover with CMC iReady is that there are a ton of online resources, ready to print resources, both for intervention and extension activities. So, WIN stands for what I need. And so we do tend to focus a lot and talk a lot about the intervention that happens during WIN, but it's also an opportunity for students to extend their learning if they're demonstrating that they are ready to extend. So we do have WIN groups that are math extension, and some of those groups are utilizing some of the resources through the online portal of iReady. And I think that was kind of all I wanted to highlight for math. I just think that we're a little bit behind where we are in ELA in terms of making a shift. So I'm not totally surprised that we kind of stayed even, but I would expect to see those numbers start to climb.
And just, Maria, I'll just reiterate that difference is last year, please correct me if I'm wrong, for ELA, universally everybody was implementing the pilot of CKLA.
Yeah.
Where for last year with the math pilots, it was just certain pockets and they were utilizing the previous curriculum. So now everybody's implementing iReady. So it'll be interesting to see.
Exactly. It's like this year for iReady is like our last year for CKLA. So we did a all school, all year pilot of CKLA last year. So it was in every classroom for the entire school year. And our math pilots were more, select teachers for a select period of time. So even the teachers that piloted CMC iReady, it was only for a few months. It wasn't for the entire school year. So we don't have students coming up into new grades this year who have had a year of the new curriculum under their belt like we did with CKLA. That'll be our next year.
I would even say that in that year prior, 3 years ago, we had made the shift and that a lot of
Yes.
teachers were implementing structured literacy strategies in their classroom, even if it wasn't exactly CKLA.
Mhm.
It was different things that we were kind of trying in our effort to get ready for this shift. And so I think that there's, it's about 3 years in.
It really is.
To the shift in reading, the way we teach kids to read now.
We started with professional development like 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago we called it our exploratory year. And so we were exploring other resources, other open source curriculum. UFly was one that was in a lot of classrooms, and out of the University of Florida Literacy Institute. So we were learning, but we were implementing, and as we were learning, and then that exploratory year really kind of hooked everybody and was like, okay, now we need like real curriculum. We don't need to like figure it all out ourselves. So, yeah.
That is a phenomenal shift. I will say I visit the third grade classrooms and get to see CKLA in action. And I'm hearing good things from the teachers. And then it's really wonderful to see it playing out in the data as well. So.
Yeah, it's super engaging. And I'll say one other little anecdotal nugget about CKLA. So you may know our food service coordinator is Lindsay Geisberger, and her mom happens to be a office sub in our office right now, Krista Geisberger, who has a long history with Basich. Anyway, Lindsay is very knowledgeable and connected with the Renaissance Fair and Renaissance history and culture. And our fourth graders are studying the Middle Ages in the CKLA Knowledge Unit. So Lindsay came today in her full Renaissance garb and visited 2 fourth grade classes, came together. And they were like so engaged. She had a slideshow. She was telling them all about like, the hierarchy of all the way from the emperor down to the, all the different, I mean, she knows way more about it than I do, but because they were learning about it, the Middle Ages, like they understood what she was talking about and they really got a lot out of it. And some kids were making connections to, having visited London and seeing the changing of the guards and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really just taken hold of our school, and so we feel like we're all in it together, and kids are excited about what they're getting to learn.
Great, thank you.
Take us home with math at Kent. We are so thrilled to see the kind of results that we're experiencing at Kent. just extraordinary just results on the CASP. If you think about it from, as Raquel showed, before the pandemic, our students were about 70% of our students are meeting or exceeding standards. And now we're going, then we had the dip after the pandemic, and now we're well beyond that with 5% growth the year prior and last year's growth of 7%. Increase in achievement. It's just really extraordinary, and there's a lot of things that we can attribute that to. So we've named some of them here. So really, that tight alignment in our math practices across all of our math teachers, whether you're a 5th grade teacher to an 8th grade teacher, our teachers are really focused on, number one, that common curriculum that we now have across our math classrooms. Before we were sort of split, we had 5th grade where they were using Eureka Math, which aligned with the 5th grade with the Basic, and now and then 6th to 8th grade we're using Big Ideas. So now this year, and this isn't reflected in these scores, but we're excited about this continued collaboration where that we're talking about how we're supporting students with excellent, best first instruction in math classrooms. A part of that is our standards-based feedback work. So making sure that students know what's the most important thing and the most important skills and content that they're learning. They're tracking their own progress towards proficiency. Teachers are providing feedback about that progress, and students are continuing to strive towards learning, towards meeting those goals. So standards-based feedback and all that it has encompassed has really allowed just our teachers to focus on what's most important for students to know how they're doing towards that, and then make that continued improvement. The use of Khan Academy to supplement Khan Academy learning paths is another tool that's supplementing Big Ideas instruction. It supplemented our classrooms last year, and now it's across all classrooms with additional math, approximately 30 minutes of math homework that's tailored to each individual student's readiness level for math. So that is on top of what students are engaging in terms of math homework. It's also the tool that's a foundation for our extended math class. So it's tailored to students' needs. And so they're just making progress from there. And so that's just that alignment of practice has really been just a strength for and a reason, one of the core reasons for this growth. We, as Grant mentioned, we have this opportunity resource gap that he explained so eloquently. So I'll just let you note that that's something that we're being very mindful of, and we're really wanting to make sure that our Latinx students and all of our students in different subgroups are making progress as we make progress as a school-wide system. Our multi-tiered systems of support, very clear structures and supports in place for us to talk about students in intentional ways with grade level teams, with our MTSS team. So we're thinking about students who need different kinds of instruction, and we're just monitoring their progress really, really carefully and closely. That progress monitoring comes with using data. So our map growth is a really important assessment tool that we utilize. In September, we just, at the beginning of the school year, we administered the map growth, and then we administer it again in February. And that allows us to, in September, kind of have a baseline for our students, kind of where their foundational skills are at, where they're starting from. That determines instructional supports in the classroom. It also determines placement in intervention classes or potentially exiting out of classes. And then we look at that growth, as you know, until February. And so that's a really important tool that we utilize along with in-classroom assessments and other classwork. So we can just keep our eye on every single student and the kind of expected progress that we're hoping that they're going to be making. And then that ties to our data-driven Tier 2 intervention classes. Grant talked about zero-period reading, and we have zero-period math classes in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and we're really eager and excited about the opportunity to have a zero-period math class. And that the subset of the students who are part of that class are students who are they just need a review or a preview of the content that's being taught in the classroom, but there's not huge foundational gaps that we're seeing with that student, but just seeing something twice or having another opportunity to work through in a small group setting 2 times a week in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and now 5th grade has been really, really core to success. In our extended math, that's a class that happens during the school day 4 times a week. Students who have a little bit more significant gaps in their understanding of skills and other content. And so, as I mentioned, Khan Academy is used as a foundation for that, as well as some connection to current content. Both of those classes are taught by math teachers, and so they know what it looks like in the classroom, and their collaboration helps to ensure that whether you're a 5th grade student or an 8th grade student in extended math, for example, or that you're getting that instruction that's connected to your classroom instruction. And then academic workshop and homework club, those are classes that have Jessica Carroll. I'll just say she's sort of like the gift that she works. She provides individualized students with support in math. She knows what the math instruction looks like across all grade levels, and so she's able to help provide that targeted one-on-one individualized support. So those are just some of the ways that we feel like are really effective in helping us serve our students really well in math. Anything you would like to add?
There's just one thing I would like to add, and that is that in previous years, we've looked at like grade level proficiency on the CASP, and we do that now when we look at our MAP scores, because that's the most kind of formative and then summative measure in the spring to see how progress tracked across the year. But I will just say that in math, pretty much each of our grade levels had a bump in their achievement level. But I just want to highlight, because we've talked about 6th grade in previous years, our 6th grade went from the previous year, would have been 2024 results, with 60% of our students meeting or exceeding grade level standards, to this last spring, 83% of our students. And that was something really to celebrate, because one of the things that we really emphasized with our core math team are those core foundational programs, that we are fully invested in big ideas, that we give standards-based feedback with learning verification forms to help students track their progress before they take an assessment and even after taking an assessment, the use of a math notebook, and the use of Khan Academy. And we really emphasized those things and saw an incredible boost in a grade level that for years has been one that has seen a dip. So we're actually excited to see scores continue to increase in math as we really emphasize those core components now, also with our 5th graders, since we have a aligned curriculum 5th through 8th grade.
Thank you. Those are some pretty phenomenal numbers. And for both schools, I have watched you plan and analyze and all the work that went into this, and it's just so wonderful to see it paying off here. So
I also just want to say I appreciate you all mentioning the opportunity gap in our student groups that are still finding challenges. And I also want to celebrate that we did see those student groups increase, though. So I think it's important, although they're not where we all want them to be, we are moving in the right direction. And that's something to celebrate, and look at what are we doing to make those, slow, methodical shifts, I think are important for us to continue to leverage. So thank you for your work on this.
I just want to say I appreciate the commitment to continuous learning, but also the balance of not overly teaching toward the test and not overly emphasizing teaching. And I just appreciate the balance that both campuses have struck with that, because it's really evident when you're on campus that you guys have this really intentional strategic approach towards academics, but you're not doing it in such a way that, everyone is sort of like test obsessed and nervous. So it just feels really balanced, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to echo what was said up here. Just, we're on the rise, either consistent or on the rise, and that's great to see. And just connecting, it's just awesome to see all these changes, connecting and all this together to produce, one view of results, which is great. At some point, I hope we could just say, check the box. We can move on to, like, CAS is solved. Let's move on to the more important things. It seems like we're trending in that direction. Grant, you mentioned the 60% to 83%. I saw that. I think the other thing to note is that same cohort the next year did 78%. So they also continue to grow as well, which I thought was fantastic. And then I have a son that was in the 4th grade group here. And I think you mentioned this, Maria, was just that big difference. And something that I noticed with him as well is he just, and this is a sample of one, it's just slowing down, just like taking it like somewhat serious as a, you know, being like, oh, actually, this actually, like, you guys actually look at this data? Like, I'm like, yeah, we actually look at this. And I think that went a long way with him. I don't know if that's going to work for everybody else, but I saw a dramatic improvement. And yeah.
Say that because I feel like, I know we feel like that has become, is becoming more predominant on our campus for teachers to start talking to the students and talking to the kids about these assessments, and that they are meaningful and that they are a way for us to kind of measure what, you know, I always like to put it like, what do we still need to teach you? It's way less about like what you know, but what do we have, what do we need, what do we get to teach you? Because that's why we're here and it's our job, but really kind of getting them to slow down and take it seriously, and you know, then it's really usable as a tool. And sometimes I think that when we talk about the third graders, you know, it's like the first time they're taking a test like this, and so there's so much newness to it. But I have definitely noticed, and we've talked about the fact that just teachers starting to talk about that with kids at such a young age. I think we were a little bit afraid of it at first, but it's really impactful.
Yeah. And I have one just small ask for the basic team. Is it possible to get the 2024 grade level comparison data just so I can, like, it was different between the two of just the year over year compare. And maybe it's just not on my sheet, but overall, just
I can follow up.
you could follow. Yeah, you could do, you don't have to do it right now. Yeah, I don't have to do it right now. Yeah.
Make sure I understand the ask.
I could follow up with Raquel. We don't have to cover it now.
We'll get
Yeah.
you whatever you need.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm sure we have it.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you very much. We technically have a board break, but we also have a very short stretch to the
do
end
it.
here. Should we keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
First from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Joseph. Any comments or changes on the consent items? Seeing none, we need a vote to approve the consent items. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The consent items are approved as presented. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of the annual accounting of developer fees for fiscal year 24-25?
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Joseph. Any comments or discussion?
The only thing I do want to highlight about this is if you recall from unaudited actuals, we saw an increase in the revenue with our, we did see an increase in the revenue with our developer fees. We also changed the rate for folks to remember. And then there is a portion of these fees that gets sent over to the Tamalpais Union High School District.
Okay.
I have one question about this. Just a reminder. Is this go into a restricted bucket or is it unrestricted funds?
Restricted, and it have its own fund, not even on the general.
Oh, okay, great. Facilities, yeah, okay.
So just for the idea is that developers are developing their homes, their buildings, and that's going to increase the usage of our facilities. So the money that's generated from there goes into support that maintenance.
Thank you. We need a vote to approve the annual accounting of developer fees. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The annual accounting of developer fees is approved as presented. What?
I'm just, we'll go a little bit out of order from the agenda, so that's why
Are we?
oh, maybe I'm just looking at the wrong thing.
Okay. Do we have a motion to consider the approval of resolution number 5, honoring the indigenous peoples of the land? Am I missing something?
Those are consent.
Oh, those are consent. Okay.
So moved.
We have a first from trustee Amanzadeh,
Second.
second from trustee Moscato. Any comments or discussion? I think we had a really great discussion earlier and lots of really good input. Thank you again for getting that together. And thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, and I did want to extend my thanks to Wendy. She spent time on this over the summer and has been just such an amazing leader in getting different buy-in and bringing students in, and just really appreciate her leadership and her generosity with time and her patience, because it's a complicated topic and one that we really want to get right, and just appreciate all you've done, Wendy.
your expertise that you have brought to the committee and helped us move the work forward with your expertise and your experience. So I feel like we've made some good progress because of it.
Okay, we need a vote to approve resolution number 5, honoring the indigenous peoples of the land. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution number 5, honoring the indigenous peoples of the land is approved as presented. We are moving on into governance. So everybody's welcome to stay or not as you choose. So
Thank you.
thank you so much, everybody.
Does anybody use the restroom?
I could use the restroom. Yeah, we could take
Quick.
Okay, so we're taking a break.
3
we'll
minutes?
take a quick break.
3
3 minutes.
break.
Yep. Okay, resuming from the board break. Next up is board meeting highlights. I have a couple. You want to go first?
Oh, go for it.
Definitely, the work that was put in and presented tonight on the land acknowledgement was phenomenal. So I wanted to thank, for the third time, thank everybody for all of that. I also thought seeing the jumps in the test scores was more than I expected in a wonderful way. So, really big kudos to the teams for driving that. Benny?
You already covered them, so I don't need to repeat them.
Sorry.
I really appreciated the way that the CASP data was presented. Like it was really high level and I felt like I could like get specific, but also just get the takeaways. And I feel like you cultivated that and with the slides in the beginning too. And I really appreciate that. Sometimes the data presentations are long for me in my personal learning style, but I felt like I could like stay with it and grasp everything. So appreciated it.
Good feedback.
Future agenda items.
Can I just say one more highlight? I think
Sure.
our polling results.
Oh, yeah.
Were huge. So I just think that I think we still have work to do. There's work definitely to be done, but overall to come out the gate even higher than we did for Measure E.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a testament to, then you hear that information from our sites about what's happening on our campuses. And so I think it's really positive.
Yeah.
It's a great meeting. Future agenda items and governance workshop planning.
So the board has in their packet just a very draft workshop agenda that was put together through feedback from the team just over time. And so I think if people want to put their eyes on that to look at it.
So I think there's a couple things here. One, we need to ideally align on a date today on when we can have this. I know we've got some challenges with schedules, but the idea here is I think there's been multiple themes that have been brought up over the course of this last 6 months that we want to revisit as a team, or at least review as a team. We may not change anything. And they align around a couple of key areas, just meeting management at a board meeting. We've talked about a little bit of we're a small district. At the same time, there's procedure and protocol around board meetings, and how do we want to either align or change the way we do things. And I think it's important that we not only align on that, but also share it with the public. And so if we do want to make any changes, I think that's important. We've had several stakeholders ask us if we can live stream board meetings. We've talked about that in the past. Some of the challenges of just, even maybe not today, but in the past we've had technical difficulties, but maybe it's a topic that we revisit again. We do want to be transparent, but at the same time we want to make sure that we can deliver a good experience without taking up a bunch of board time. And I think there's probably a possibility that that's possible. And so there's just topics like that fall into this category and I want to invite like other board members to add, hey, are we missing something on, and we'll go through each one here. Just like, should we add anything to this? Be cognizant of the fact that we can't solve everything in a 3-hour meeting, but I think the goal is, I think priority wise, I think we talked about this a little bit, like board meeting management, board roles, board communication protocols, and then this board self-evaluation process. We'll talk about in a second is like the order of which we attack or we conduct the meeting, and then we go as far as we can, and we can, if we can't finish all of these, we can move on to, we can add these as an item for the next meeting. So we just talked about board meetings. Maybe we just stop there. There's a lot to absorb there. Is there like other things within kind of that construct that we wanna bring into that meeting?
So are you saying, are these set topics for this next?
These are
governance?
proposed topics.
Okay.
We can edit these, we can add to these, we can remove these. But this was basically over the course of the last several months, bits and pieces of feedback that we've got. We've tried to put them together into one place.
Yeah, these are all
And-
open questions that we've had for a while, so we just wanted to get that squared away in the workshop.
Did you say 2-hour board meeting or a 3-hour?
Our workshops are typically 3 hours. And so, yeah,
12 to 3.
12 to 3 typically.
Okay.
They don't have to be. That's just what
Yeah.
they've been. I mean, we can adjust. And we had just had a doodle poll, and unfortunately not able to get a date that worked for everybody. And I think the interest is having all board members be able to participate, and so we'll probably have to look at some additional dates.
Should we try and align on that
Now,
date now?
again, people want to pull out their calendars.
Yeah, before we do that, just like, is there any, like, are these topics, they seem like the ones that we've been, that we've talked about? Is there something that we need to change? I think this is the moment to, because otherwise I think the way, what to expect is this will become a light agenda, some version of this that will be part of this. We're going to ask for a facilitator to help us through this. And so that's why the scheduling is hard, because it's not only facilitator schedule, it's all our schedules and trying to align those things.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering what happened to our board workshop goals, because I felt like we spent a lot of time developing that and we've kind of lost that. So I would like to see some continuity of that, like maybe we check in on what the goals are and see like whether and how we're meeting those. I do also want to like sort of caution us to be disciplined in our crafting of the agenda so we can really get through everything, and just wonder if like some of the pieces could be addressed in closed session or even open session. Like some of these things feel like we could just talk about them sort of in turn as meetings go forward versus like dedicating board workshop time to it. Like I guess the board meeting management pieces for me are relatively straightforward, but maybe there's things that
I actually totally disagree
Yeah.
because we've been back and forth, like, can people ask questions? Can they not ask questions?
Yeah.
What do we do when someone stands up and gives false information publicly? I feel like this has been an ongoing thing where, it used to be we'd sit here stone-faced and not respond at all. And then we decided we'd really like to be able to respond a little bit. We need to understand what we can and can't do. I feel like we need a protocol in place. So for me, that's actually the number one thing on this agenda.
Yeah, I think it's important. I guess when I think about the governance workshop, I think about like kind of discussion items amongst us. And to me, that's something more of just like, we just kind of need training or advice, but maybe that's what you're
That's
thinking.
what I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
I
yes.
didn't pick up on that. That makes sense. If we want to have someone come in and just like instruct us and help us develop like answers.
That's exactly what we're planning on doing is, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So could we add, is ex parte a part of that, or is that under board communication protocols?
I don't even know what you mean by that.
Just like some of the limitations surrounding ex parte communications.
Like Brown Act?
Yeah.
None of us are lawyers except for you.
Well, I think that feeds into both the board meeting management and the board communication protocol. So we
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
memo from Josh, but I think
Yeah, we should go through all of our understandings and just know exactly what the rules are, I think.
Yeah.
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 I think that can be under bullet 2, reviewing the existing board communication protocol. And then I think that third bullet, I think I haven't heard it directly, but I think there's been some feedback on like the board memos or other, just making sure we're super clear for Raquel, what we're looking for from her. So that can be something under number 3. We talked about, urgent communications versus less urgent communications. So these will all kind of fall under there. So.
Seems like you guys know sort of what we're after here, so.
I mean,
It's
we've
just
been working on this, so.
Yeah.
just taking
Yeah.
notes and just
Yeah.
kind of putting it together. But at the same time, if so I'll give like an example, like the board self-evaluation process. It's just something we haven't done in a couple of years. Do we want to bring it back? Maybe we have to, maybe we have to learn how to do it well and then do it, and so I just think like it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to actually create that in here. It's just like that's the discussion.
Yeah, and I think these all, at least in my mind, fall under one of those board goals that we set of being like a high functioning team.
Yeah.
And so to me, this is kind of like the first step towards getting there. So that's how I'm thinking about it. I think it would be helpful to let the board members have a little bit of time with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe just
Why-
respond to Benny.
Yeah, why don't you do that and respond to me directly if there's changes or clarifications around what this might look like. I'll go from there.
Sarah had mentioned that what we had worked on prior, I think we were kind of leaning towards those being more like pillars of what the board, stands for, I guess. And any kind of actionable event that we need to take, or, in self-reflection, measuring what we're doing, I think there needs to be checklist basically of, did we do this in this amount of time? This is our goal. We were going to sit with each grade that we're responsible for by X amount of time. Did we get that done? And so we don't really do the day-to-day job,
Yeah.
But I think it's important to have a checklist of this is what this is what we should do. This is what we did do. This is what we want to do, just so it's all actionable stuff, that it's not just minutia and like philosophical, dreams of what we want to be.
Right.
But we'll never get there, So I think that's, I can give you my input on that as far as a checklist goes, but you guys obviously have the history. I don't. So it's,
Yeah, I think the kind of going back to your point of like trying to do too many things in one meeting. I think Kari said it well. This was a culmination of, I think, the third or fourth goal around a high performing team. What does that look like? And these themes emerged in a couple other instances throughout the latter half of last year. And so it's just a great time to just focus and I guess on that goal specifically. And what are the things that we need to iron out? And maybe if some things don't fall in that, we should kick it out. But I think there's a separate, like, it seems like a check-in around board goals that we need to go deep on. Are we delivering on this? Do we need to adjust this? Do we need, that feels like related, but almost, I think if we try to do that here, we might just not have enough time to do that.
in the workshop, you mean?
Yeah, in
Right,
this
right.
specific
Right,
workshop,
right,
like there
right.
might be like,
Yeah.
Right.
I think it just feels to me like we're starting a new set of things, all of which are priorities, but it feels like we put a lot of effort into the board workshop goals and we haven't necessarily like checked in as a group. So it would feel odd to me to kind of start a new self-evaluation process, which I'm totally open to. I think that's healthy. I just think if we can find a way to bring that forward, at least as some of the prep work and at least for the facilitator, so that we're continuing what we started instead of starting a new set of things. Like if there's a way to merge it so it feels more integrated.
Okay.
That would be my feedback.
So I guess I'll just chime in here. I want to say community communication was one highlighted board goal. Student achievement, another highlighted board goal. District finances, fiscal solvency was another board goal. And then the fourth was the piece around a high functioning board of trustees. And so to Sarah's point, I think these kind of topics are subsets of one of those four goals that I just mentioned, which is that board governance goal. And I think you're not seeing that connection per se.
Yeah.
It's not listed here anywhere, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think the point is that like, these are all important things that need to happen to meet that goal of the high functioning board. And then that will feed into those other three goals that I just mentioned and how we're able to have those things happen and where we are with them. So I think it's just kind of some reformatting semantics here, but it seems
Yeah.
to make sense because your point is taking us back to like, what did we set for our direction?
Yeah, for the
And-
year.
And so like, let's just keep going back to that and just bringing these underneath that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if this board workshop, what I'm hearing from you guys is focused on the high functioning board goal, that's totally fair. And we should pick a focus, but let's just at least remind ourselves of like the other goals. If we have a 3-hour board meeting, let's carve out a little bit of space to like check in on those goals and have the board member responsible, speak to it and how's it going, and maybe get feedback from Raquel as well of like how she thinks it's going.
Okay.
I think we spoke about too, Raquel, things that you need from us as well, whatever that may be,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I think that the what I appreciate about the comments is that it's keeping us focused on what we said our intentionalities were, right? Which align to our LCAP, which aligns to our SIPSAs, and it all has different kinds of language, but ultimately the core to those things are all the same. But having this piece for the governance board, because I shared my focus for this workshop would be that meeting management and the communications pieces, which I think will definitely feed into the high functioning. And I think highlighting our board goals and where we are, we're hearing little sprinklings of that stuff. We heard it tonight. And so I think that all makes sense. And I think it's absolutely doable.
Yeah.
I think we probably won't have time to add anything, but I'm interested in like the governance team norms. I think that fits into like board member roles and things like that, but I think it's something to make live in our board.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. In fact, I think one of the asks would be like we'd get a digital version of this to look at as a pre-read, because there's things in here that may not apply anymore or need editing, and we really need to own this, right? And so I think feedback taken. Let's frame this up a little bit better. Let's connect various elements here and come back with like something that the team can react to, or we just adapt that, Raquel, as part of the agenda, and we'll just take that feedback and run with it for the actual board workshop, just because it'll be hard to get this all coordinated and done. I guess it depends on when this meeting is actually going to be.
Yeah, that's the next piece, is just trying to schedule it.
So is the reason we let go of the original date for the facilitator?
No, it just wasn't on our calendars and I can't do it.
Yeah.
Family's in town. I see my dad once a year, so I can't
Yeah.
spend 3 hours when he's only here for 3 days.
I understand.
So it was just a calendaring issue, basically.
He doesn't want to come
And-
to the
and we
workshop.
do feel, what's that?
She doesn't want to come to the workshop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I personally feel like we really need every board member there. I don't feel like this is one where like one person's just like, oh, I can't make it. Like this really, like we really need everybody's input and agreement on this. So that's what we're looking for, is a date where every single person can make it, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we talked about.
So we could be looking at December maybe? Or more in November maybe?
We had 2 November dates that don't seem to work for everybody. So, so I think we'll just have to go back, and I would be more inclined to say what's going to work for the board, and then we can go to our facilitator versus the other
Yeah.
way. And we tried it the other way. We tried it, what's going to work for the facilitator.
Mhm.
And so I guess my one question is we were focusing on Mondays and Fridays, and I'm wondering if there's midweek days that could work for board members. I don't know.
Except for the 24th, I'm probably the most flexible of everybody. It just, that one day was off
Why would
the.
we focus, is Mondays and Fridays what works for the facilitator?
No, that was feedback
Benny,
I
right? You
heard
said
from.
Mondays and Fridays, right? I think.
Yeah, I think typically like our board workshops has always been on Fridays.
Yeah.
And so it's typically on calendars. And then I think the Mondays was just, I think for me, I'm in the city Tuesdays through Thursday, but like if I need to take a day off to do something midweek, maybe we could land the day that might work. Like,
Yeah.
like is it
was just
like a
throwing it-
Thursday?
trying to narrow things a little bit.
Thursday's relatively free for folks. If that's the case, then we could put a couple Thursdays on the calendar.
I think,
yeah.
I mean, for me, any of those days, I'm just in Sacramento every Monday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. That's right. Okay.
So Tuesday through Friday seem to be the better days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During the school day works for people versus doing something outside of the school day, like 3 to 6.
3 to 6 is fine.
If it's not a Tuesday, it can, I'll just have to plan ahead and get my mother-in-law to do my driving for me that day.
Is there a date? I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, we're just trying to
Saying
align on
the
a
week,
day,
I'm like,
'cause-
oh, I'm driving my kid to sports every day after school, so I
Yeah.
just need to book my mother-in-law to do it or somebody. But if
This
we're
is-
planning ahead,
Wednesday or Thursday, what sounds like Wednesday or Thursday is 3 to 6.
Thursday is slightly easier for me than
Did you say Thursday?
Thursday, but I can make it
Is
work.
David on?
Yeah, he is.
Stella, it's late over there. Can David do Thursdays?
He's not, he,
Oh, okay.
David mentioned to me that he has a couple more New York trips, so we would just want to figure out when those are and avoid
Yeah,
them.
for sure.
okay. Okay, so we'll,
Let's do a doodle with a bunch of Thursdays.
I can make it Wednesday work. I can. I just need, I just gotta plan it.
yeah, it looks like
Hey,
Thursdays are.
hey guys, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Thursdays work a little bit better for me, but there's one thing I can move on Wednesday afternoons. Afternoons definitely better.
Why don't we try for Thursday and see if we can get something on a Thursday? And if not, then we'll open it up to Wednesdays. As long as-
Yeah, or there's like a doodle where you can do yes or if need be.
Yeah, see, that was one of my shortcomings. I went with kind of best ones for me. There's other things I could have done.
Yeah.
Well, there was no date that worked for both Sarah and Benny, so
Okay.
fine. They were moot anyway, so.
Okay, we were just narrowing
We'll
it
find
down
one.
because-
We'll
but
find
okay,
one.
we-
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think do like maybe a big, just for your guys' ease, a bigger, more expansive poll and we can say yes or if need be. And then obviously we would
Yep.
all, if you can do all yeses, that's great. But if a couple people are if need be, then
Yeah.
could help.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
great. Reports from board trustees. I went and visited third grade. It was pretty great. I got to see each classroom doing CKLA, and they were talking about amphibians, and there was a lot about poison dart frogs and other very cool animals. So I also got to hear a rendition of I don't know, there was a song they did about like amphibians and other types of animals, and they did it to the tune of Baby Shark. And they had just learned it that day, but they got up and performed it for me without even looking at the screen. This was in Mr. Bessinet's class, so it was pretty phenomenal. So yeah, it was great. I mean, I can definitely see CKLA in action. I was really impressed by some of the vocabulary that they're learning, and how it ties vocabulary in with science, in with, it just like the combination of all those things is very impressive. So. Cool. Benny?
I do not have anything to report. I need to go into the classroom, so I will work on that next.
Okay, Sarah?
I visited 4th and 8th grade. 8th grade was really cool. The kids were presenting on like the Constitution and different things like that. And I talked to one of the 8th grade teachers about their DC trip. So we were comparing notes on that. I also saw a pretty intensive life skills presentation about fentanyl overdosing.
that was from a parent who had experienced that in their family, and it was really intense. So it was really illuminating to see what some of the students are, like the content that they're getting. In fourth grade, there was a really good grammar exercise, and I could see CKLA in action because it was done in like really interesting, compelling frames to the kids. I realized I don't really know what a prepositional phrase is, and I like relearned it with one of the kids. I did notice in both classrooms, especially fourth grade, the class size was a huge challenge. Like I was in awe of what the teachers were able to do. Just all the different needs of the kids. I really saw the intensity of that. Because the content that they're teaching is significant. You know, it's I haven't seen that yet because my kids are younger. So just like realizing the concepts and work that they have to do to like get through to the students and the number of students that they're addressing really struck me. So, oh, and then just all of the Measure E work, we've been working together to preliminarily report the good polling results to like local electeds and some of our community group members, just to get sort of like early buy-in and support. So that's been helpful, I think, just to cultivate like buy-in at all levels of government and throughout the community. And I think that's really helpful.
That's great.
Yeah.
David?
David?
Yeah, I didn't do any classroom visits yet, but I did speak to some teachers about arranging those things. I'm going to go see Win Time, which I'm excited to see. And we had a very good coffee chat at Basich, Sarah. We had a good attendance and good conversations around that. And we did have our preview of the poll results and sort of reviewed that with the guys. And I'm confident we made the right decision on our advisors on that front.
Larry?
I haven't visited yet, but I plan on it next week.
Okay,
So I'll
fantastic.
report back.
Okay, is there anything to note regarding the pertinent dates?
I had one question about the calendar. I don't know what's happening right before holiday or right after, but if you want to do a larger type of food event, let me know. Just, give me a close, like a week's notice if you're, or
Yeah.
or if there's something else happening within the schools that they do normally
Yeah.
for the holiday.
I
building-
think what we're planning is probably something when they get back from the winter break.
Gotcha.
The reason is because there's a lot that happens from like
right.
like a lot that comes in during that time. So to leverage that and have the board do something at the start of the new year. And so Beth and I are working on calibrating the dates. We have the information from KSPTA and from the staff, their goodie days and stuff to be sure that we don't overlap. But
Thank you, Larry. You always bring really yummy treats and food, and yeah, so thank you for offering.
I heard from a couple of people that breakfast could be a good to try, breakfast coffee, because people do lunch clubs, so they can't come. And after school, people are tired and they want to leave. So I heard a couple of different people just share that my breakfast type style might be appreciated.
yeah, I mean, however the board decides, I think it's just the notion of getting the dates confirmed, for
Yeah.
folks. And then if there's breakfast versus a lunchtime, totally makes sense.
Yeah. Great.
Morning break.
And are we thinking of reconvening to close to address the other matter? Or are we going to do that later this week?
Let's just do the debrief meeting in norms and I'll close and then we can,
Okay.
yeah, okay. Any thoughts on the meeting and norms? I thought it went very smoothly today. Okay. We are returning to closed session at 7:40, can't see, 7:53 p.m.
Okay, so we're returning to close and I'm going to shut down the webinar.